notes?
I see the title slide and it looks great.
All right, excellent. Okay, we're ready to get started?
All set to go.
Okay, I'm assuming everybody can hear me. So welcome everybody. My name is John Haubrick and I'm coming to you live here from my Central Pennsylvania office. I hope everybody is doing well wherever you are in the world right now, in the crazy world right now. I know the biggest news for PA this week was curbside liquor sales that apparently exceeded $2 million in the first day they were open. So that's kind of how we're doing right now. So to introduce myself, I wear a couple of hats in our statistics department here at Penn State. I'm officially titled as an assistant teaching professor. So I teach some of the introductory stat courses. But I also do, but a lot of my duties, my main duties, are the instructional design for our online courses in our department. So I'm kind of a real technology teaching kind of stat geek. So I have quite a number of things. Okay. So basically this, when I talk about being involved in many different kind of geeky about some of the stat stuff, my last two talks were about using LaTeX to create accessible math equations. And the other one was on proctored exams. And now I'm talking about peer review of teaching online. So I'm glad you're all here and I'm glad you're interested in things that I am as well. Basically, this presentation is going to go through, I'm going to look at our current peer review process that we do for the online instructors in the stat department and kind of the research I'm conducting on that right now. And then also have you share some thoughts as well and challenges that we have and can identify when trying to identify effective online teaching. So raising your hands, your virtual hands, how many of you are designers? Just so I get an idea of the crowd. Do you have the ability to raise your hand? Okay, how many of our faculty? Oh, a lot, okay. Anybody administrative or like a course lead, program lead? Okay, a few of you as well. All right, excellent. So this will kind of really tie into all those positions. And I want to start with an analogy to kind of demonstrate the importance of our peer reviews and what we try to promote, because we want to promote that communication and sharing of best practices. So the analogy I'm going to use is painting a picture. So let's say we're given a canvas to start with, and we're not going to paint a mural on a wall or sculpt something amazing. We just have a simple canvas. So how can we create and learn from others to really make it come alive? And as a faculty, we're all kind of given that canvas that has constraints to it that we can create within, whether that be a syllabus, the learning management system, the content management system. And we're also given that we have to create a certain painting. We're given these objectives that fit into a larger painting, the curriculum. So we often struggle with our own painting because we don't know what the larger pictures look like, especially with the online world. Instructors are often brought in to teach one class or two classes, but they may not be educated on the whole curriculum, or they may not teach, they may specialize for a master's program, they really only teach one class. You don't teach the class before it or after it. And so what happens when we teach it online is that we often have to create our own portion of that painting. And we're all starting with different tools based on our experience, our interest, our time, how much money we have, how much professional development, among other constraints. So we often feel like we're in this kind of solitary island, painting and limited by our own tools. And you can see this graphic that some people have more colors than others on their palette. Some people have different tools, different paint brushes. And then obviously the ability to paint can vary from person to person. And so, so your professionalism in that way as well can vary. So a couple other things that happen, many of you could probably relate to, is isolation can happen anywhere. It can happen in the same office building. So these people are, all painting their picture behind closed doors, and you don't have anybody really seeing what everybody else is doing. And as in our case with teaching online programs, you might have instructors scattered all over the globe. And this slide became even more relevant when I re-looked at it for this presentation because of what's going on in the world today. We are all over the place. So, how do we then promote this collegiality and sharing that we need? Because our goal is to have people take a look, kind of see what are the other people doing and what are you working on? Then what ideas can be shared and gathered from those other people. So the idea is that by sharing tools and ideas, we can kind of store our knowledge in our network of colleagues. All right, in this case being all of the online faculty for our program. My wife, she goes to those painting parties, or they're led by an expert. And what's nice about it is everybody has all the tools and everybody sees the big picture. And when they're done, these things look great. All right, so it's kind of, and if you look at the drawing here, now that everybody's sharing tools or sharing knowledge, they're all creating their part of the picture until finally we put it together. And our idea is that we're working together towards this same goal with the skills and the resources that are needed, and being able to share that across. So a couple, the objectives for today, for this session, maybe it's kind of look at how we adapted elements of a customized QM rubric for instructor to instructor peer observations. Kind of identify ways to measure presence and reward innovation and risk-taking in an online course. And maybe think about ways to implement and revise the peer review process at your institution as well. So hopefully it's you find some of it useful and can relate to some of this. So first of all, to kind of to understand what we did in this process or do in our process, you need to understand a little bit about our program. We have a group of our stats department. We have about 30 online courses. Most of those courses are in our graduate level master's program, the Master's of Applied Statistics program. We also have 2 undergraduate courses that are used as service courses for other programs, other World Campus programs at Penn State, like our Stat 100 and our Stat 200. The courses that we teach online are to have the same curriculum as what we have on campus. We were one of the first programs at World Campus to go completely online. And that was roughly 15 to 20 years ago when they started actually creating these or online versions. And we also, adopted the open online education resources. So if you've ever searched for, say, Stat 200 on the web, on Google, you will probably get our Stat 200 course or any other of our courses. All of our content is open. The only thing you cannot access is the activities and assessments that are contained within the LMS, and we use Canvas for that. And that's where this kind of peer review is important for us. We have a mix of tenured teaching and adjunct faculty in this as well. And they use master courses. So basically, as if we have a new, say adjunct faculty come in, they're going to be teaching a course that was based off of one that was already designed and created. But we still provide a lot of flexibility around the design, what happens in the LMS, et cetera. Now the content and the online notes are more protected. They're, because they're public web pages. They have one faculty member assigned to them, usually work with me to update those if needed. But individual faculty do not update those or change those as needed. But within their LMS, they do or can change things. So they have a lot of freedom in the LMS. So even though they're based for a master course, the objectives are set, the online notes are set, the content's set, and the major assessments are, but the activities, discussions, all of those things are up to the faculty member, as well as even some of the look and feel of their LMS space. So this process, the peer review process, really allows instructors to kind of get into other people's courses and see what they're doing. It also allows us to share the good things that we're doing, so these become best practices and adopted by others. Instead of coming top down and saying this is where we're going to create it, we more or less here's the best practices, here are some things other people are doing as well, let's adopt what works. The peer reviews are required for all resident courses and online as well, but the frequency is a little less defined in the online world. We have them once a year now instead of every semester, mostly because we use the same group of instructors are pretty much teaching every semester. Our courses pretty much run all 3 semesters. So it's primarily our peer review, a formative assessment, and you'll see later on here what are kind of the goals of it, but it can also be used for promotion materials for P&T. So even as well as certifying with like the grad school for adjunct faculties who are teaching, sometimes they'll want to see proof of their peer review. So there's this fine line between it being a real policy type summative evaluation and it being a formative type assessment, because we do have a lot of freedom to create and work with it. And you're going to see that here of what we do. Most of this process, and again, when I came in, a lot of it was already, the idea of the peer review process and the culture of the peer review process was already set up with the previous instructional designer in my program a few years ago before I took over. And so that part of it was one of the hardest things to start, is that culture of sharing and getting in each other's courses. That was already adopted with this faculty, and they were already well bought into it and they understood it. And then so that part was easy for me. But I also, as many of you probably do too, wearing many hats makes it difficult as well. I'm an instructional designer and I want to help with improved teaching, but at the same time, I'm also kind of like a colleague to some of these, to some people, as well as including, tenured faculty, and I'm just a teaching track faculty. So there's a lot of, gray area, I guess. And, as living in education, as you know, we live in that space. So let me go over and quickly review our current peer review process. And basically how it starts is, so this would be, say, in the fall, and we did this last fall, starts with an email from me that will identify who the instructor is paired with. We try to pair them with someone who they have not been paired with previously, because again, we're trying to build that collegiality, because a lot of these faculty are probably not, we have a lot that are adjuncts and just don't know each other well. They've been teaching online forever, but they're not in the same office or whatever. Then that instructor, the next step, will add them as an observer in their Canvas course. All right. So then the instructor completes an instructor input form. And I have a copy of that in the handouts, all right, for this session. So you'll be able to see that. And what that does is give the other instructor, the observer, more information about their course. For instance, if your course uses like a third-party tool for discussions that is not obvious within the LMS, the observer needs to know that so they know where to look for certain things. And then the observer will get that input form to review before they start their review. All right, so they're gonna read down through that, see if if there's anything they want them to focus on, etc. And then, so the observer then on their own completes the rubric, all right, which I'll show you here in a little bit. And after they complete the rubric, those two people will meet. They will schedule a meeting to discuss what they found, as well as 2 new discussion prompts by me, which is a big focus of the process. And then finally, when they're done, they're going to complete those rubrics and upload them to the cloud, right? And where I and the director of the online programs can read them. All right, so let's take a look at the technical part. And kind of give you I don't know how, everyone's going to have their own way of doing this, but I'll just show you what we do. We start out, obviously, our LMS is Canvas. We use Qualtrics surveys for the instructor input form. The reason I did that was because I had it set up so that they can actually, when they select their name as one of the first questions in Qualtrics, when they're filling out that input form, it sends an email directly to their peer review observer. So I just kind of eliminated a lot of manual work there by using Qualtrics. So that worked really well. I did it for the first time there in the fall, and it worked really well. The rubric itself is just a Word doc. Just sort of make it simple. A lot of people want to do that offline probably, or maybe even print it out. So the meetings usually are typically are virtually, obviously they're all virtually now, will happen using Zoom. And then finally that Word doc will be uploaded. Currently we use Box to collect those, right? And it's a folder that's available to myself and the director of the online programs. So it's a folder such that they can put the rubric in, but obviously they can't read anybody else's that are in there. So, like I said, the big hurdle I was fortunate to get into was that the culture of this was already in place. They were expecting, every semester, every other semester, a peer review process. The old process we used was a rubric that was based on the 7 principles of good practice in undergraduate ed by Chickering and Gamson. So since we have a lot of freedom in the LMS, our instructors do, I was kind of looking for a way to hold the faculty to good standards, as well as getting the faculty familiar with research-backed best practices in course design. And I thought, why reinvent the wheel? Because we are now a fully QM adopted university. So we're lucky to have access to a lot of the great resources provided by Quality Matters. And it's also a great way to inform faculty about these standards because they're now applying it themselves to someone's course. So they actually get to use it. Now I modified the rubric. I cut it down to just the standards that our faculty would have control over from semester to semester. For instance, our alignment of objectives, content, and assessments, that should already be set. That's nothing that we're going to be switching each semester. If we did a course revision where it's a new course, maybe that's a different story. But these courses have been running for quite a while. So let's take a look at the rubric. And again, this is in the handouts as well. So let me find. One second. There it is. Okay. So here's our peer review guide. And basically what would happen here is it gives the whole process over what I just explained to the instructor. I give an example of what it might look like to fill it out. And then the actual rubric is down here. And a couple of things I did so I had the standards, I had the description. I also added where you might look. And then the instructor simply put an X for met or not met. And then I encourage them to put any notes or evidence or recommendations that they might want to put over here, as well as an area down here below each block for any additional questions that they want to ask. All right, so you can see there's not near as many as not all the standards are used. I also have some of our own, so there may be certain standards that are particular to just our stat department, which are very few you see, are added in there as well. And then down below here is a step 3 talking about the peer-to-peer meeting, and I will talk about that here in a second. So that's our process. Let me go back to the slides. Okay. Now, the new part that I added last semester is how do we move beyond just the rubric? And I used that rubric in fall of 18, and I realized there's still 2 major aspects that I always talked about when onboarding new faculty that I kind of wanted to highlight that moved beyond just the design, and that is the teaching presence and innovation and risk taking. So how do we assess it, encourage, reward it, and also how do we do the same thing for instructor presence? And overall, we want the process to be constructive, informative, encouraging, and rewarding. All right, so how do we do that? So a couple questions when thinking about kind of the difficulty with some of this that I wanted to hear back from you in the chat. And these can just be very, very quick answers, a couple lines, and we'll put them out there for everybody else. So in the first question I had was, think of some non-examples. So thinking about this instructor presence and innovation and risk taking, what does lack of instructor presence look like in an online course? So if you were to go in and observe this, what are some markers? What are some things that you think would stand out to you as a lack of instructor presence? You just put those in the chat. Okay, no visual images. Not asking many questions, yep. Communication guidelines, No discussion board participation, yes. Little or no feedback on assignments, absolutely. Boring discussion boards, predictable questions. No content beyond basic text, yes. Good, all of those things. And so those are also, as you're trying to define what makes it good, often thinking of things that make it not good can help define that. What about this one? What would a course look like or feel like that is not kept fresh, technically or pedagogically? It's not kept up to date. What would that, so when you go into the, what are markers or what are things that you would notice or make that stand out? Outdated information, yes. Not using new technology, yep. Outdated links. Little evidence of current research, very good. Is my slide full screen now?
Yes, you're good, John. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Sorry. Misaligned objectives. Good, there's all sorts of things here. All right, let's think about this then from the other point of view. What does instructor presence look like while looking at an online course? So if you're going into someone's LMS, halfway through the semester or further, what does instructor presence look like? Regular communication, absolutely. Weekly announcements. Lots of interaction. Up-to-date announcements. Visible feedback. Comments on the discussion boards, yep. To direct students towards objectives, very interesting. Reflections. Voice and video, yep, great feedback on assignments. And I think that's some of the messy stuff there too. When you think about observing another person's course, we only let them in as an observer because obviously, you know, there's always how much access do you give another instructor? I mean, obviously we're bound by FERPA as well into someone else's course. And can you always see, especially what if someone's only using email for communication? I mean, obviously I would encourage them to use announcements for whole class communication, but somebody might just be using email all the time. If you're viewing that course, you may not be able to see that, nor you might not be able to see the feedback on assignments as well. What about second question, a little bit tougher here. How do you identify or recognize when someone's being innovative or risk-taking in an online course? Promotion, yep. Piloting new tools, yes. Willing to try new techniques. New interaction. Yep, it is tough. Absolutely is tough. Sharing with others, allowing it to happen. Yeah, that's a big one. Because that's, and that's where kind of moving on, and that's kind of where this peer review come into play, is how do we reward and allow it to happen, because don't penalize people or make people afraid to try new things. Just because it was taught this way and you say, hey, here's a master course, you should teach this. How do we still encourage them to actually, to every semester though, you look for to do something better? And so that's kind of what brought me to the research that I'm working on. So I wanted to share what we did, you know, in the fall 2019 courses. And I received an internal grant from Penn State Teaching and Learning to explore the peer review process for online instructors, because it is a topic that a lot of people are trying to, you know, figure out at this point. And I've partnered with Laura Cruz and Dina Levy from Penn State's Schreier Institute for Teaching Excellence for this research. And one of the first challenges with researching peer reviews is that it's really hard to get an IRB approval when dealing with data that could possibly be used for promotion and tenure of faculty, which probably explains why, you know, maybe there isn't as much research as there should be out there. So we finally got everything approved after many weeks of back and forth, about 2 days before we started the peer review process. So luckily I got it in. We sent out the consent forms to faculty so that we could use their data in our research. So the data they fill out on these rubrics, et cetera. And what happened was we didn't get any pairs to consent. I should have asked by pairs. So by not asking by pairs, I couldn't use any of the data, because you fill out information for somebody and they get information from someone else. So without ever having two of the pairs consent, I couldn't use any of the data. So we had to kind of reuse what we did there. That's a lesson learned. We reworked our data collection plan to a retrospective anonymous survey. The survey was administered this semester. We wanted to see if they made any changes to their teaching this semester based on their peer reviews in the fall. Now, I don't have any results yet. I'm currently in the process of analyzing the results It should have a write-up for publication in the next few months. But let's take a look at what was included or how I addressed the questions that I just asked you in our peer review. So the first thing we did was talk about instructor presence. And one of the things I build with all of my, anytime I'm working with new instructors, I talk about the teaching presence, the social presence, and the cognitive presence, that community of inquiry through Garrison, Anderson, and Archer, many of you I'm sure are familiar with. And so like someone just posted there in the chat as well, a lot of what those questions that we just asked happen when you talk, when the two people, the observer and the person getting reviewed, talk. And that's a big part of it. So that conversation, that Zoom meeting, is a very big part of this peer review process. And part of that is I just simply ask them. So one of the discussion questions is share with your peers how you establish each one of these types of presence. And there's more about each one of those types of presence as well in the rubric, so that they can look at it and kind of understand what they are as well. And it's also, I talk about these instructor presences. I send out weekly emails to all the faculty. And so they hear this stuff, they hear these words a lot. And then you write down and keep notes of how does your peer establish these three types of presence in their course. We do the same thing for discussion, innovation, risk-taking. Just ask them. People love to talk about, especially the new things that you're doing, the great things that you're doing, the risk that you're trying, the innovative things that you're doing. You know, and even though we only do this once a semester, this could be anything that happened this semester or the semester before, or anything that year. And I have a few questions in about that innovation, and what you know, see if other people they think would benefit from it, etc. So that's kind of how we get this out, because all this stuff then would be recorded, something we can look through, and you know, as a teaching team and administration can look through and say, wow, this is really cool stuff that they're doing. Let's get this out there to the rest of the group. Obviously ask them first and see if they'd be willing maybe to lead a session on it, or something like that. So these are, and also what it does is it kind of promotes it a little bit, because now they're having this conversation with somebody. If they didn't try anything or haven't tried anything in like 5 years, and they'll be like, oh, maybe this is something that we could do, or allowed to do. And maybe they didn't realize that. So it's also part of that, kind of making them kind of aware of it, that, yeah, you should be trying, you know, maybe looking at new things. And they don't have to be big things. They're not big changes. They're not course revisions. They're little things that you know, hopefully, as any instructor, you learn from each semester, and you do something in the new semester that makes it a better course for your students based on what you did or what you found out in the previous semester. Let me give you, so we sent these surveys out, and again, I'm in the process right now of doing the results and the write-up and things like that. But I pulled out a few anecdotes because I thought it would be, I thought you would like to see. One of the questions on the survey was, please describe the changes you plan to make to your instruction based on the participation in the peer review process. And, you know, they're not big, they're not major changes, but I thought it was very good that they're at least verbalizing, they're identifying this based on their peer review. And so to me, that's a successful process if they were able to do that, even if it was small modifications. One of the questions says, please describe the insight you gained from your participation in it. And you know, if possible, share 2 insights. And, you know, I really like the first one. They value that interaction. They enjoyed the opportunity to discuss teaching ideas. So what, you know, you really have this opportunity to talk teaching to another online faculty member. And those that are remote really enjoy that. But then I put some ones that aren't so good here as well. So my peer reviewers Canvas course had little content for me to learn from. So I really did not gain any feedback nor see anything to learn from. And so that's going to happen as well. And then one of the questions, please describe what changes, if any, would you suggest be made to enhance the benefits of the process, of the peer review process. Somebody said it was great. They really like being able to get into another instructor's course to help them generate new ideas. But then I had a couple that said, it's too long and tedious. So, make it shorter. So you'll have those as well. And those are things I'm going to look at moving forward. All right. So that's my presentation on what we're doing and kind of the research that we're working on right now. But it is a lot of gray areas, and we're kind of wading through that. So many of you can probably relate to that. So I will now, down about 15 minutes, less than 15 minutes, take questions that you have. And you can put these in the Q&A. I think there's 3 in there already. What I'll do is I'll just read them out. And so it's on a recording, and answer them best I can. So what did you do to attain the APP QMR designation after your name? That allows me to do the reviews, I think the informal reviews, if I do that correctly. Jay might be able to attest to that. That was a 1-day training offered at Penn State by QM, is how I got that. And I thought, being at a QM conference, it would be appropriate to put those after it. What considerations do you give when pairing instructors? Great question, because we have such a range. So I have, these masters, tenured faculty, along with just adjuncts teaching intro, intro to statistics. So we actually go across all lines, and we really mix them up. So our biggest consideration probably is, have they met this person? Have they paired with them before? So I try to keep record of that, and trying to pair people up who have not been together before, because I think there's things to learn from the different levels of teaching that you have there. So I think it's good to share across. What kind of training, if any, did you provide to faculty who serve as peer reviewers for the courses? These are not peer reviewers as far as like a formal QM peer review. This is our process we're using for peer observations. So when you think about how that happens in the RI world, it's usually just a letter or an email from the department head said, hey, would you please observe this other faculty member? So there's no formal training as far as that goes. I did step them through, I try to be as very clear as possible. I think that was one of the questions I asked on the survey as well. Most of them said the directions are very, very clear, and that just kind of shows them exactly what they should do, the steps they should take, and what they need to do to go through that. But as far as any peer review training for those faculty, they do not. Do you have considered incentivizing faculty for participating? All the faculty participate, so you have to participate. It's, the director of online programs, will basically it's an expectation for teaching with us for that semester. I wonder how many major modifications can one do when a course is already QM certified? That's a great question. And I don't think major modifications is not really the purpose or the intent of what I'm trying to get out of it when I say risk-taking and innovation. But it might be, it might be a new late policy, or it might be, another way they found an interesting way for extra credit, or something that's just little, but it's still looking to improve the course each time. But to do that within the standards of an already QM certified course might present challenges, but it also might make it a lot easier. The session handouts, Jay might be able to answer that better. I went to that one page. It has all of the links to each session, and the handouts were linked on the right, but I'm not sure exactly where that goes.
John, you're correct. That is in the schedule at a glance, and it is with the links I posted at the beginning of the session, and I will repost in just one moment.
There we go. Thank you. Is there any fault to see if faculty have implemented any suggested changes? Yeah, I can absolutely do. A lot of faculty will just reach out to me and say, hey, I would like to try this. Can we do this next semester? And so I will know, the implementations that they've had. There's a lot of communication between us. Pretty collegial faculty. Are all the faculty credit, any non-credit faculty? Marcy, what do you mean by credit? I think of courses as credit. Degree students? Do you mean, do we have any grad students teaching? Non-degree seeking. Non-degree seeking, we may have some of those students in yes, okay, full-time faculty. Most are full-time. We have a handful that are just adjuncts. Some of them teach at other universities, and so they're just part-time. So they may teach, we have a couple that teach one course 3 semesters a year. That's it. One section, 3 semesters a year. And they're all mixed together and they all do the peer review. Other questions? Does anybody currently have a peer review process for online faculty? Good, Glenda does. Susan's in the process of setting one up. Good, they have one for both undergraduate and graduate. Oh, good. You're going to offer a course on how to peer review and mentor fellow faculty. Very good idea. Good. A process for review by ID, similar to QM. Yeah, and it's the challenge of not necessarily reviewing a course per se. A lot of it is reviewing the teaching of the course and how do we shift to that. So did you have the resources before the session started? Yeah, the resources have been up for quite a while, or should be linked on that site. Do you have any rubrics for evaluating teaching social and cognitive presence in the course? On the rubric that I gave on the handouts, there are some little things to look for there, I believe I put on there that are markers of those. But I would love to have a better like rubric for that. And there are certain, if you search, I think I found some markers, but I would like to have better ones, especially ones real specific to just my program. You know, what does social look like? What does cognitive look like? What does teaching look like? And have a better rubric for that. All I have right now are just a few things to look for, but not a formal one. It's something I need to improve. All right, well, if there's no further questions, I think we're getting close to our time. I hope this was helpful. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you for attending. You please contact me if you have any questions. Feel free to email me. I also put the bit.ly link to our Stat Online resources, which will have a link to every course we have. It's open educational resource. But I manage that site that you'll go to there and the information on there.
John, would you mind dropping that bit link into the chat for everyone so they can cut and paste?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe. See something here. Stop sharing.